And most people, they think small. They're thinking, well, I'm making, 13, 14, 15 bucks an hour. How can I get $1 raise per hour? Screw that. That's not how you become successful financially. You're trading hours for dollars. And what I teach all my students, the first step is you trade your hours for high dollars. I don't want to make 15 bucks an hour. I want to be able to pick up the phone and close. I want to make 200 bucks per hour.
If I flash back to where I was back in the day and I was hearing myself say stuff like this, I'd be like, dude, 4K a month sounds pretty sweet if I can get a few people to pay me that. It doesn't directly drive revenue. You can't point your finger at certain statistics and say, this is how much money that produced. Because 4K a month, I remember, I'll never forget this. A guy named Greg Reed taught me this. He was a client of ours. And you know what he said to me? He said, Jeremy, 4K a month is more than both of my Mercedes and my house payment. It's a lot of money. The issue with that was the lesson I learned here. It just didn't have anything to do with driving revenue, so it wasn't easy to justify. Just so you guys have a clear perspective on, what we'd ideally like you guys to start up here in this 5-day window, we're going to take a look at some of the online service business lists. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one of them. Just as a reminder, we have our marketing agency, a social media agency, the virtual assistant. We have just being a freelancer, selling single skills like the web designers, the copywriters, content creators, email marketers. Like Dan mentioned, he was a one-man show with the copywriting agency he started. Any just one skill, once again, more of the freelancers. Let's start off with our virtual assistants. Virtual assistants, otherwise known as VAs, they get paid the least and they do a ton of work. One guy that I hire consistently, his name's Junjun, and I think he's over in India, if I'm not mistaken. And to be clear, I love Junjun. I love his work. I love his work ethic. He calls me sir at the end of every single sentence that he ever sends me. I'll tell you what, man, I can have this guy do anything. It doesn't matter how long it takes. He'll get 2 laptops at once and he'll just sit there for 12 hours a day and just knock out tasks for like $50, for things that'll take him a week. It's crazy, like the amount of hours you could be paid anywhere from like literally $1, maybe $5 most an hour if you're in a virtual assistant role. And I know some that might brag and say they get paid like $10 to $20 an hour, chump change in terms of an online service-based business, given that you're going to put an extreme amount of time and effort into it, which definitely is not my cup of tea. It's not the way I want to direct you. Look, if you want to be a virtual assistant, you might as well just hop off this broadcast because this is not what we're going to teach you. You're better off working a regular job than being a virtual assistant to, businesses that are online. So the moral of the story there is literally no money in being a VA and being a virtual assistant. Let's take a look at being a freelancer. Freelancers, remember, they sell specific digital skills. Okay. It could be copywriting, web design. You could be an SEO specialist. Maybe you're just an advertiser. Maybe you're doing video editing or you're taking photos and editing, graphic design, even accounting, technically a freelancing skill. I would even lump lawyers underneath this category because they're just selling a specific skill set to people online.
And a lot of people start this way. It's good. It's a stepping stone, right? You have that skill set. It's great. Like you get started with that, right? And where if you hit the 6-figure income, and I hit that 6-figure income with my first high income skill, and that's wonderful. But if you want to go to that next level, then you need some more leverage. So write this down. It's about leveraging your skill to go to that next level. And it's not about doing something new. Because a lot of time, people, they develop certain skill sets, but then when they start a business, that business has nothing to do with the skill set they have developed. That's not being smart. What is being smart is taking the skill set that you have, I'm gonna leverage this to start that business. And you see why having the high income skills, not only when you're working with clients, you're developing your experience and gaining those business acumen so that you're actually learning on basically your client's dime.
Yep.
You're learning on their dollars while you're perfecting and starting their business. It's a big difference.
I started that way too. Just as Dan mentioned, he started as a copywriter. Technically, back in the day, one of my failed businesses was an SEO agency. So I just worked a job where I was the head of marketing for a guy who I sold a cell phone to, who then later hired me for that role. And I had to learn everything under the sun. One of the things I learned was SEO. So I remember I had one guy who's down in one of the Keys here in Florida. Long story short, this guy, his name was Captain Jack. He had hired us for SEO to get his boat chartering company down in Almirada to take off a little bit more, but we were only paid about $800 a month. So although, sure, that might be good side money for a lot of people, I don't want you thinking small. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to say here with the freelancing thing. Like, sure, you get to sell a skill for a cost. And like Dan said, back in the day, hey, 10K a month, 120K a year, that's a lot. That's a lot for a lot of people.
So happy.
I want you to skip some stepping stones here in this challenge. Okay, sure, along the way, hey, you end up at 6 figures in a year, that's great. That's not my intention for you. I want you to go well beyond that. it's going to be possible for some of you to take this model seriously. But to be clear, when you're a freelancer, you're just selling skills for a cost. That's all it is at the end of the day. Benefit of freelancing, instead of working a job, you do get to work with multiple clients at one time. So you can end up, charging 10 people $1,000 a month and you, hey, easily, you're at 10K a month, just like that. You could charge 10 clients $2,000 a month. You're at 20K. But the problem with the freelancing, you're limited on your earning potential because you're literally just selling your own time and effort. So like there's nobody else to help you when you're a freelancer. It's just you selling whatever skill that you might have. I mean, hey, like I said, that might sound great for some people. Once again, I want you to skip some stepping stones in the process of what Dan and I had to learn the hard way. Go to the better model. There's only so much time in a day that you can work. Therefore, freelancing is just kind of a step up from being a virtual assistant in my eyes. They get paid more, still very limiting. So Mauricio here said, what do you think of running a VA business? If you're in the position where you have a bunch of VAs that you're essentially pimping out their time to businesses, you might think of that as lucrative because you're managing a group of people. However, the problem is they're just virtual assistants. What's the middleman money on a few dollars an hour? Even if it's between 100 people, it's just not a lot. And you still have a pretty big headache of the operational management of that kind of business.
Here's the way I want you to see it. In the beginning, for most of us, first we don't have a way, a mean to make a living, right? We say they go to school, you get good grades, you get a job. For most of us, first of all, we have from zero. We get the first stage we want to get to, it's just some kind of income. Make sense, right? Give a thumbs up if that makes sense, right? Some kind of income, something, right? You get the first job. Then the next goal, once we get that, is how can we increase that income? How do we maximize the income? So from it could be a low income job, right, making X amount of dollars. And most people, they think small. They're thinking, well, I'm making, 13, 14, 15 bucks an hour. How can I get a dollar raise per hour? Screw that. That's not how you become successful financially. You're trading hours for dollars. And what I teach all my students, the first step is you're still trading hours for dollars, but with a high income skill, you trade your hours for high dollars. I don't want to make 15 bucks an hour. I want to be able to pick up the phone and close. I want to make 200 bucks per hour. Right? So it's not a linear from $10 to $20 or from $10 to $221. It's how do I go from $20 to $200 per hour? Suddenly, when you can do that, your hourly rate has gone up. Yes? It's gone up significantly, but there's still a problem. The problem is we only have 24 hours a day, right? So the next stage is not just how do I maximize my dollars because you can only go so great. Now my hourly rate is $10,000 per hour. Someone to hire me for consulting is $10K per hour, $166 per minute. But that's still limited. That is still limited. Business, it's about leverage. It is about how do you go beyond. So your earning ability is this, write this down, is disassociate with your time. So first, time for money, then it's more time for money, maximum money, then has nothing to do with your time. You need to disassociate if you want to create more leverage. So that means it's not just the skill set that you have, now you got to combine it with some additional skill sets to go to the next level. And then at the end, once you have that, the highest level is then your money working for you. Now it's your money working 24 hours. Now you're like an investor. You're making an investment. You're making money through the dividends, through interest, through return, through all the different assets that you have. That's the next level. But here's the problem. Most people, they got a fucking job. They try to jump into this. They don't understand these stages you got to go through. It's like people making minimum wage and they go buy a piece of property with no money down, right? They leverage like to the hill and suddenly something happens to their property. A tenant moves out, a toilet breaks.
They can't afford it now.
They can't afford it. They can't even afford 1 month of payment. They don't understand. They have not had the income coming in. They have not worked to increase the income to be able to do these type of investments. So this is it. It's not creating wealth. What I share with you, it's with the stage that you're in, and you focus on what you need to focus on in those stages. You look at anyone who is wealthy, pretty much, it follows one of these things. Some kind of skills, some kind of business, and then they graduate to investments. Make sense? Yep. Yes?
Dan, Jeremy, we got a question from Joshua. He says, I have a decent real estate background. Would doing wholesale real estate online in the US and Canada work for this model? Would it work for this model, Jeremy?
It will work. So Jeremy?
Yeah, Joshua, I would love for you to watch this here. And at the end of the class, you come back in the VIP chat and you let me know what you think on that question.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. Love
And then second question was, sorry, Jeremy, just one more other question I saw here was, I know bookkeeping. How can I maximize my income using an online service business?
Yes.
I think it's the same answer as well, right, Jeremy?
Same answer.
In this first training, to be clear, we're going to cover the model for you guys. I believe in the second or third class that you'll have a very clear answer to that question. And well, I'm always willing to circle back and answer it directly as well if you guys would like.
Yes.
So let's work our way through this so you guys can understand it. Yeah. So back to the point here, freelancing, just kind of a step up from being a virtual assistant, still very limiting. One of the other online service businesses that I mentioned is a social media agency. Now this became very popular without a doubt. It is a very simple business model and it is a form of being an agency. So businesses, so you guys understand it, businesses all over the world, they're currently paying social media agencies to create content, post that content, and then just like manage the business's social media account, managing comments, DMing people back and forth, coordinating like content deals
making
with
a
other
post.
Actually, Jeremy, when I first started with Dan, I was Dan's social media one-man agency at that time.
That's right.
There you go.
with 3 clients, and then Dan says, fire the other 2 clients. I want to be only client.
That's right. True.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and to be clear, like you can do this by yourself. You can also have like a few staff members. I'll tell you one thing, when I first got started, this was one of the main services that I sold. We were charging people right out the gate $1,800 a month. Then we found out between the 3 of us that it just wasn't enough money, and we started charging $4K a month for it. We had people paying us just to do this kind of basic stuff. And with the few staff members I had, the big issue was it was still very time and effort intensive. And on top of that, we weren't driving revenue for the business. So although same kind of thing, like $4K a month, I totally appreciate it. If I flash back to where I was back in the day and I was hearing myself say stuff like this, I'd be like, dude, $4K a month sounds pretty sweet. If I can get a few people to pay me that, like, why wouldn't I want that? Like, are you trying to demonize that? And to be clear, I respect where you're at if you think that that's a lot of money. But the biggest thing that I want to make sure you understand is that when you're responsible for driving revenue for a business, that can help you get paid exponentially more than if you're just managing something like somebody's social media account. Because although sure, you can technically justify it as a part of the money-making process, it doesn't directly drive revenue. You can't point your finger at certain statistics and say, this is how much money that produced. And so that was the big problem that I noticed. We weren't able to retain clients for a long duration of time because $4K a month, I'll never forget this. Guy named Greg Reed taught me this. He was a client of ours. And you know what he said to me? He said, Jeremy, $4K a month is more than both of my Mercedes and my house payment. It's a lot of money. Even though to me, it didn't feel like a lot of money. The issue with that was the lesson I learned here. It just didn't have anything to do with driving revenue, so it wasn't easy to justify. So once again, just to be clear, although you can work with multiple businesses at once, your monthly retainer really can't be much more than $1,000. Because once again, it's much more than what a lot of people have much more value in that they get to use more consistently that do help drive revenue. So you just become limited pretty quick in terms of what you're able to do. So still, like I was saying, guys, it might sound great. And I respect that. Not trying to demonize it in any way, shape, or form. I just want you to hear me out here and let you know I'm trying to get you to overcome the hard lessons that I learned. I don't want you to start off as a social media agency, because I was there. I felt that was pretty limiting, and I've learned so much since that I feel is going to be much better for you. I wish somebody would have came down to me and said, Jeremy, this is exactly what you need to do. And I wish I would have skipped over that whole social media agency phase. Remember, long-term, it's a very stressful business model to run because you're just limited on cash. You have to have staff in most instances, unless you just want to be a freelancer. Like I say, you can't really charge much more than $1,000, maybe $2,000. If you get up to the level I was at $4,000, that's great. But still, you just really aren't going to be making as much as you could.